Oh, it's these guys. Tweedledum and Tweedledummer. Wow, aren't these two talked about a lot? Whether it be out of hate, love, or lust, Zoro and Sanji seem to be a big part of most One Piece discussions. Individually, they're very solid characters in their own right, but together? Together... God, are they annoying. They are so annoying. They're loud, they're childish, they're violent, and for some reason, Toei has made them nearly kiss twice. Yeah, this is what you're missing, manga onlys. Toei's subtextual homosexual propaganda. No, but listen, I like them. I really like them. Sanji's my favorite and Zoro follows nearly right behind him, so of course I'm going to enjoy any scenes of their wild bantering. It's especially funny that the individual fans of these two argue in the near exact same way. Like, does really no one see the irony in just how aggressive the fans of these two are to each other? Quick, I need to write up a 10-page essay about why Zoro's balls are fatter and heavier than Sanji's right now. As wild as that is, in all honesty, they're probably the most iconic duo One Piece has. I know that is a very bold statement considering there's duos such as Luffy and Zoro, Law and Luffy, Kid and Killer, Nami and Usopp, etc, etc. But in terms of popularity and influence, Zoro and Sanji seem to be the it guys. Hell, they even got a whole manga volume trailer dedicated to them, even though the volume in question was not all about them. After all, lest we forget, Sanji was pregnant, Zoro has been locked in. I am not making this up. This was a mistranslation from the official One Piece Instagram that for some reason mistranslated multiple languages like this. Good job, team. Keep it up. But before we get into any of that, it's sponsor time, and you'll never guess who we have today. Do you seek the thrill of a win against opponents while having a totally platonic rival relationship with your boy best friend who you definitely hate and don't care about at all? Then do I have the game for you. You got it. You guessed it. This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Do you love gaming but hate getting out of bed? Then Raid Shadow Legends is the game for you. This is a game with amazing PC graphics completely on mobile, meaning you can play this on the train, the bus, or in your definitely not important work meeting. Your stocks may be down, but who cares? Play Raid Shadow Legends. There are 650 unique champions in this ever-expanding game, as well as billions of ways to customize and build them, which means you can get sexy and competitive with all the selections to choose from. And not only is there a wide selection, all these champions have sweet and juicy lore to go with them. Some of this lore includes the world of factions, with forest elves, tree spirits, and even living rock monsters. Raid has also recently added a new faction called the Sylvan Watchers, with these guys becoming some of my favorite champions. Our Lil is certainly up there, because just look at him. What a majestic forest twink he is. If you want to know more about him, go get this game. And to kick off the new year, there's a fresh Raid update with a bunch of new features, including a new season of the Forge Pass, the Plarium Points program where you can earn in-game goodies including a legendary champion, and more. In addition, this month sees the launch of Raid's 4th anniversary Titan event. This new type of event lasts for several weeks and will see you earning anniversary points by competing in special themed events. And finally, Raid has released a legendary champion based off MMA and pro wrestling legend Ronda Rousey. You can get Ronda for free right now, whether you're a new or long-time player, just by logging into Raid. Log in and play Raid for 7 days between now and February 20th and Ronda's yours. Don't forget to use the special promo code RAIDRONDA to get a bunch of cool stuff. And if you haven't started playing Raid yet, click my link in the description or scan my QR code here on screen. You'll get unique bonuses worth $35. We're talking a free epic champion Jotun, 100k silver, 50 gems, and 2 epic skill tomes. So hurry up, install this game, and fight your way to the top. And thank you so much Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Alright, back to Zoro and Sanji. The official merchandising of these two is the funniest thing ever. One of my favorites being a rollout scroll pen that shows quotes of Zoro and Sanji's conversations. Because god, haven't we all been in a situation where we just need to see what these two idiots have yelled at each other. Guaranteed to improve your day and up your morale with any exam. They also seem to get paired off in nearly every non-canon film, a humorous interaction between these two always assured. But it's not just non-canon canon content. They have also been labeled the Wings of the Pirate King. And even though I don't think it's been canonically said for both of them in story yet, we've got confirmation for Sanji from Robin. So I think it's very safe to say that Zoro is his fellow wing. But even with all these interactions, merchandising, fan content, and even Oda's own strange additions in the Q&A section of the manga, if Zoro and Sanji had a serious fight, who would win? Zoro beat Mr. One, so he's stronger, right? Whoa, that was surprising. I thought you said if Zoro and Sanji had a dick fight. Man, what? There still appears to be a misunderstanding in regards to these two. It seems a lot of people just don't get them. They don't get why they work, they don't get how they work, and they don't even know if Zoro and Sanji even like each other. To me, and maybe to you, it feels very obvious that they clearly don't hate each other. But I've seen many opinions online of how Zoro and Sanji apparently legitimately just can't stand each other. It may be due to the constant scaling of them. It doesn't tend to come down to the personality with discussions of these characters, but the power. And god, doesn't that just seem to be a hot topic amongst fans. But listen, as always, I am not here to power scale. This video is not about who's stronger, not on any imaginary scale anyways. Any mention of strength within this video will be due to story and writing reasons because, and let's not kid ourselves here, sometimes the realm of mathematical power scaling must be bent for the convenience of story purposes. I am saying this very clearly now because I know there's going to be some very loud arguments about what I have to say about Zoro and Sanji in regards to strength. Please be nice to me. I am only a tiny little thing in the terrifying realm of Zoro and Sanji fans. Anyways, there is a lot going on with Zoro and Sanji, and I personally believe they work fantastically together. In fact, their moments together are some of their best character moments in the series. But there is a certain moment in a certain arc that solidifies their compatibility in writing and in character, that shows us why they're the wings and why they have an amazing chemistry as back-to-back crewmates. And that moment is the Davy backfight in the Long Island arc.
Why you booing me? I'm right.
It seems to be a wild statement to say the Long Island arc was important, but stay with me because I do indeed have my reasons. I promise I'm not breaking your balls here. It's time to dissect the goofy ass swordsman and the sad little man. One thing that seems to cause confusion with these two is why they fight in the first place. After all, the fundamental morals of Zoro and Sanji don't seem to differ too drastically. They're a lot alike in plenty of ways, actually. This is most prominent in Water 7, with Sanji agreeing with Zoro in terms of allowing Usopp back into the crew. They both hold a heavy love and loyalty towards the Straw Hats, especially to Luffy, so both of them saw Usopp's leaving as something serious he needed to make up for. This same idea follows Sanji into Whole Cake Island, as Sanji says he can't come back to the crew because he disrespected his captain, which Zoro would have no doubt agreed with at the time if he were unaware of the circumstances. It's actually very rare that they disagree with each other, perhaps apart from stupid competitions and other smaller things, but they ultimately agree on what's important. They also both heavily protect the crew, and both have an understanding that their strength should be fully used for the safety of the Straw Hats. Neither of them will ever question Luffy in regards to orders. This has maybe happened once or twice between them. One of those moments ironically being Zoro disagreeing with Luffy's decision on allowing Sanji to run rampant on the Water 7 train. That is, until Luffy explained the situation to Zoro. Similar to Luffy, Zoro and Sanji were born for the seas. After all, we have a wandering swordsman in search of strength, and a seafaring cook in search of a legendary dream. Combine their power, their strategies, and their intelligence, although I doubt Zoro has any of that, and they're perfect to be Luffy's pillars through and through. So the question remains, why the hell do these two fight? And the answer to that is, just look at them. Yes, they agree on the heavy stuff, but in terms of lifestyle, they're like cats and dogs. Complete opposites in terms of living, really. Imagine being a prim and proper cook who wears suits, has perfect presentation, and showers every day, just to share a ship with this muscle-brained stink bag. On that same note, imagine being a swordsman who is completely dedicated to the craft of battle, just to fight side by side with this goofy idiot who swoons over a woman 10 times a day. I think Oda summed it up perfectly with this diagram. Zoro wants none none of that. My man is just walking away. But jokes aside, I think the biggest thing to look at here is the difference in a core part of their characters. And that core is their main goals and dreams. Zoro's dream is to be the world's greatest swordsman, and while a near unachievable dream, it's still a realistic one he can accomplish within the world. Sanji's, on the other hand, is to find the All Blue, a fantasy ocean you can only hope or believe exists somewhere in the world. To achieve both of these dreams, an iron will is needed, but in different ways. Zoro's iron will comes from training to become stronger, from fighting every enemy he encounters and gaining more power from that. Sanji's iron will, on the other hand, comes from believing such an ocean exists. It's a complete fairy tale, yet he still turns a blind eye to anyone who laughs at him for it. That faith takes a lot of strength. And here we see another reason for why Zoro and Sanji stand either side of Luffy. Luffy's dream is to become the Pirate King, and what does that take? That takes physical power, to be able to beat any and all enemies in the way who may be going after that same title. But it also takes an unbreakable spirit, a faith that the One Piece itself is a real treasure that exists. Can you see where I'm going with this? On one side, Luffy has Zoro, who perfectly mirrors his need for strength with the will to become the world's greatest swordsman. On the other side, Luffy has Sanji, who perfectly mirrors his romanticism and belief in the fantasy of the world due to searching for the All Blue. They perfectly balance Luffy out, but more importantly, they perfectly balance each other out. These two exist as complete foils of each other, Zoro having a grip on a harsher reality, and Sanji having a love for a grander fantasy. Zoro is a realist who's dedicated his body and life to what even he acknowledges is a crazy dream, while Sanji's more of an idealist, a dreamer who loves childish fairy tales and stories of noble princes and beautiful princesses. And of course, with them being on opposite ends in terms of lifestyle, where one lacks, the other makes up for. Zoro is fantastic at keeping his head in emotionally charged situations, making sure to be the rock in such circumstances, while Sanji knows when to prioritize heart over mind. Water 7 truly showed this, as we see Sanji kicking Luffy when about to tell Usopp to leave. Sanji showing Luffy what weight such words hold towards his own crewmate.
そんなに俺のやり方が気に入らねえなら今すぐこの船にサンジ
バカ野郎が。てめえ今何言おうとしたんだ。頭冷やせ。めったなこと口にするんじゃねえぞ。分かってんのかルフィ。
At the same time, we had Zoro helping to navigate Luffy through a difficult situation, being completely practical in his approach with it.
はい。
それがキャプテンだろ。迷うな。お前がフラフラしてやがったら、俺たちは誰を信じりゃいいんだよ。
It's why, in the end, they both agreed that Usopp needed to make a proper apology to come back to the crew. In a sense, they act as Luffy's heart and mind, so of course they're unstoppable when working in unison. But sometimes, the heart tugs one way and the mind tugs the other, so fights will be inevitable. Okay, cheesy metaphors aside, we need to get back to the meat and potatoes. I'm sure you're all dying to know why the hell I think the Davy back fight is so important. I've seen tons of people say this arc should be a filler, since there allegedly has not been a single callback lore-wise or fight-wise to this seemingly nothing arc. And to that I say, oh, contraire. Sometimes, my dear friends, an arc doesn't need world story purposes. Sometimes it doesn't need to be about the lore or the big bad, but about the character. The Davy back fight was exceptional at showing character relationships and dynamics. From Robin's relationship with the crew, to Usopp and Nami's amazing chemistry, to Luffy's ridiculous resolve. But the biggest thing to focus on here, and what I truly thought was the most important thing to take from this arc, was the fight between Zoro, Sanji, and the Foxy Pirates. Before the Davy back fight, we'd seen Zoro and Sanji work together. Yes, it had been in interesting ways, but we never really saw them work off each other. The closest we got was Arlong Park, their mutual care of Luffy driving them to beat their opponents. But they still didn't really do it together. They fought back to back with their own opponents, not really having a single shared target. That is, until the Foxy Pirates. And God, was this so satisfying to watch. So why did they fight here? Why did these two find it so hard to get along considering the situation? Well, just think about it. Think about who these guys are. We have Zoro, a previous lone wolf swordsman who believes he needs to do everything on his own. And then we have Sanji, an emotional cook who refuses to get in the way nor be a burden to his crew, seeing every fight as proof of his worth. How could they not butt heads? It wasn't because they hated each other, but because they both believed it was all up to them. It's how they lived their entire lives, the two of them equally self-sacrificing yet in different ways. You mix self-sacrificing with self-sacrificing, and what do you get? Two suicidal idiots. And the push and pull of this fight only prove that. We are actively watching them jump in the way of the other throughout the entire game. The swordsman, in other words, the protector of the crew, needs to make sure the cook doesn't get injured. And the cook, in other words, this emotionally charged mess of a man, needs to prove he isn't a burden to his crew. They continuously yell, "Don't get in my way," or "Do as I say," because they're both trying to do their job, albeit with probably too much stubbornness. And who knows, maybe there's something more going on here. A possibility of Sanji trying to prove himself to Zoro as much as he's trying to prove his usefulness to the Straw Hats. After all, Sanji knew who Zoro was upon first meeting him. Everyone had heard of Zoro in the East. Sanji fully understood his strength. And in my previous Sanji video, I discussed how Zoro's battle with Mihawk was one of the deciding factors that pushed Sanji to join the Straw Hats. I personally read this as Sanji believing his mental strength is nothing in comparison to Zoro's. Whether he admits it or not, there is a clear admiration he has for Zoro, in the same way he has for Luffy. And this could be a driving factor for why he was so stubborn to finish the Davy back game himself. During the game, he even says he can't let the swordsman show him up by saving his ass. And this is right after trying to end the game on his own. It seems to be a prominent thought in the back of his mind, with Zoro's own mind sticking to the belief of keeping his crew safe. On the sidelines, Nami keeps pushing them to work together, yelling that they're a team. And that's a reminder they desperately needed, especially when getting the shit beaten out of them. There's no doubt it was excruciating to watch them fight in separate ways. The clumsiness being fun until it becomes an actual threat. Sanji gets completely battered to the ground while Zoro gets crushed by iron fists, and they're left lying side by side in near defeat. And it's this moment that made me finally realize why this arc had been included. Their iconic lines create probably one of the most satisfying scenes in the series.
おい、コック。10秒経過せ。
妥当な時間だな。
What are these lines doing? Why is this tiny bit of dialogue so groundbreaking within the ever-expanding world of One Piece? Because this arc was a setup. It was a setup that began to truly present Zoro and Sanji as the future wings of the Pirate King, and this dialogue is the base of it all. Consider this. Before the Davy back fight, when had Zoro ever asked for anyone's help in battle? Especially Sanji's. He didn't ask for it in Arlong Park, or Alabasta, or Skypiea. But Arlong Park is the most interesting one because while Sanji did jump in front of the metaphorical bullet for Zoro in that arc, Zoro didn't ask for it. Yet with the Davy back fight, Zoro finally asks for Sanji's assistance. It's in his own cool boy Zoro way, but he's asking for it nonetheless. And remember, Sanji is someone who wants to be useful. He wants to prove his worth. So of course he accepts Zoro's request. Within this moment, they have solidified two things. The first thing is respect. There were hints of it to begin with, but the differences between them left their relationship on a more shaky ground. To cement it, they needed a moment of total mutual respect. The second thing, and this is the most important, is the confirmation that they are equals. Yes, their strength can be argued, whatever. But to these two, in the other's eyes, they are equals. I'm sure I don't have to explain why it's such a big deal that Zoro specifically was the one to ask for Sanji's assistance. It's not because Zoro himself is weak, nor because he believes Sanji to be stronger than him, but because he can respect Sanji on equal ground. After all, if you have two wings, what good are they if one is bigger than the other? You need total coordination, total understanding to function with your fellow wing. And that is exactly what they give us. Because what happens when this trust and respect is established? They begin to fight in perfect unison. The satisfaction upon seeing them moving together without missing a beat was honestly euphoric. And they weren't even talking to each other. Think about that. Really? Think about that. Zoro and Sanji didn't say a single word to each other after those 2 lines of dialogue, yet they executed a perfect team combo. It's almost like they're reading each other's minds, truly emphasizing just how well these two work when certifying a solid trust. Zoro even hammers it in by intercepting one of the Foxy pirates, stopping them from hitting Sanji. And what does he say to this pirate? Don't forget, this is a team battle. I just don't understand how anyone can think of this arc and these moments as should have been filler when we're seeing Zoro allowing his crewmate to have his back in battle for the first time. I'm sorry if that wording was incredibly gay sounding. I'm just far too excited about this and I am shaking in my goddamn seat. I think this moment is huge because Zoro, being the first on the crew and the swordsman, has had to be Luffy's pillar. His job is to take care of the underground heavy shit, so his captain can take care of the above ground heavy shit. But then a question pops up from this. That question being, who the hell is going to help Zoro when he needs it? Sanji, of course. Davy back has shown us Zoro and Sanji are each other's pillars. They support the other when no one else can or will. And we see this in action time and time again. It's no coincidence that Water 7, the arc directly after the Long Island arc, shows Zoro and Sanji talking to each other on mutual terms regarding the money situation. As Luffy thinks of what to do with the Mary in the distance, Zoro and Sanji talk over what to do about Frankie. And if we jump arcs ahead, Sanji literally carried Zoro partway through Wano. I don't know how much more obvious and blatant you can be in showing Sanji as Zoro's support, because Sanji throwing Zoro over his shoulder is pretty on the nose. Then in Thriller Bark, there is a lot going on in Thriller Bark, but a particularly interesting moment for me was when Sanji jumped out to save Zoro when no one else would, refusing to stand and watch Zoro take on someone like Kuma alone. No one else would do that, because no one else would challenge Zoro's pride in that way. But Sanji is a complete non-threat in that regard. Zoro is happy to have Sanji's help because he acknowledges Sanji wholly and truly. And Zoro actually panicking upon seeing Sanji screaming on the ground in pain proves his faith in Sanji's abilities, because this shocked him. Zoro was ready to start banter with Sanji, a casual interaction they use as a weird form of communication. But he froze. Why would he be shocked at seeing Sanji in pain if he believed him to be weak? Or if he didn't believe him to be an equal? I think it's safe to say that if Zoro sees Sanji struggling with someone or vice versa, they immediately acknowledge the enemy as a huge threat. And Thriller Bark is another factor in showcasing their total respect respect for each other while also solidifying their positions as the wings. Because who else would offer their lives together for their captain if not the wings? It's no coincidence that these two were the first to find Luffy after the 2-year time skip. And it's also no coincidence that they took out the Kuma bot together, a perfect contrast in how they previously couldn't defeat Kuma in Thriller Bark. I could go on and on about how these two are flawlessly in tune with each other, but the question is still there. Why do they fight so much if they literally breathe together in battle? Again, they don't hate each other. There's plenty there to prove that they actually care very deeply about each other. The answer to the fighting is, and honestly it's really anticlimactic, it's just fun. We can see it's just a friendly banter. Guys being dudes, if you will. You want to know how I've come to this conclusion? Because Zoro and Sanji mirrored the two giants on Little Garden. These two giants started as rivals, and for the past 100 years they fought every day over and over again. They talk about how they have fun, how they respect their rival, and the kicker? It all started with a hunting competition. And what the hell did Zoro and Sanji do on this island? They started a hunting competition. We even see that they're having fun with it. Both of them smiling as they talk about how their meat is definitely bigger. Also, why the hell did they have to measure their schmeat of all things? I hate this so much. Anyways, the Little Garden Giant showed us that under the fighting and the bickering, Zoro and Sanji are truly just having fun. The giants even see them bickering and say, wow, that takes me back in a fond way.
ああ、それなら俺の勝ちだ。こんなでけえサイを取った。
サイだ？てめえそりゃ食えるんだろうな。
当たり前だ。
仮勝負。仮勝負。なんかその言葉引っかかるな。
Zoro even likes to fight. He seems to be the one riling Sanji up 90% of the time. So it's no stretch at all to believe that he does this for enjoyment. As we Australians love to say, he's taking the piss. And it's a unique relationship they share. I think it's also worth mentioning that Sanji talks the exact same way he talks to Zoro as he talks to Zeph, with the fighting, the bantering, and the childish refutes. I can only interpret this as Sanji being totally comfortable around Zoro. And there's also the addition of Zoro being the first friend his own age that he's ever had. There's no fake politeness here, no talking behind each other's backs, and they're being themselves through and through when they're around each other. Yes, they argue a lot, but there's no hate here. In fact, it's quite obvious to me that Zoro and Sanji never had a real fight. They just like yelling at each other. Just imagine them like an Italian family and you'll get the gist of it. The closest they've had to a real fight is Water 7, but that was when tensions were high and everyone just needed an outlet. Sanji felt bad for what happened to Usopp and so did Zoro, so they picked on the other, but it still wasn't a proper fight. But there's one scene that has confused a few people, especially in regards to Zoro's feelings. This scene in question being Zoro's reaction to Sanji's leaving during Zou. He was pretty harsh with it. He said the crew was better off without Sanji and to let him go. So I can hear you all asking, if he really cared about Sanji, why would he say this? And I say to that, consider how Zoro has reacted to this kind of information before. Zoro is always someone to keep his head in a stressful situation. When Robin left, he considered all possible scenarios for why this happened, and he kept all personal feelings aside best he could. For Nami in Arlong Park, he analysed her before coming to a decision of what to do, his way of mind over matter shining through. But then we see his reaction to Sanji's leaving. At first, Zoro did a similar thing in Zou, talking about how they need to focus on Kaido. It's a totally Zoro thing to do, keeping it as logical as he can. But then he completely drops it by calling Sanji an idiot, calling marriage a small deal, and not listening to Luffy when Luffy demanded they get Sanji back. He even jumps to conclusions about why Sanji left.
大体な、結婚程度で振り回されるなんて話が小せんだよ。
なんですって
お二人ともあまり熱くならないでください。
十分大ごとよ。人の悩みにお気持ちせもあるか。
何
When has Zoro ever jumped to conclusions in regards to an emotionally stressful situation? When has Zoro ever voiced any personal, petty feelings and picked fights entirely on those conclusions? Not only that, before finding the other Straw Hat group, Zoro asked more than once if anyone could see Sanji, while also telling Usopp to calm down because Sanji was with the others, and Sanji wouldn't let anyone be killed. Zoro clearly sees Sanji as important to the crew, so for him to suddenly do a 180 and say, "We don't need him anyway," is very telling. I think it's very obvious that Zoro was upset at Sanji's leaving, especially with minimal information and without even a goodbye. So he lashes out in a way we honestly hadn't seen before. And if you don't believe me, put yourself in Zoro's shoes. Sanji is a crewmate he's been with for over 2 years now. Someone he's given his life for and vice versa. And with a single note, he just leaves to get married, no less. Yeah, I'd be pissed too, but I'd be pissed because I'd be thinking, hey, I thought we cared about each other. It almost feels as if you're just being thrown away. Then, to hit it home, Zoro visibly calms down upon hearing what really happened to Sanji. He's no longer picking fights, he's no longer jumping to conclusions, and Luffy even calls him out for being worried about Sanji.
あ、ゾロ、いたのか。聞いたか今の。
聞こえた。
サンジのこと心配なんだろう。
蹴るぞてめえ。ほっとけっつったろあんなバカ。
Luffy is shown time and time again to be able to read people really well, especially his crewmates. And this is Luffy actively pointing out to us that, look, Zoro does care. He's just going about it in a weird way. I don't think it's controversial to say that Zoro is really bad at showing emotion, and especially bad at showing care. He's the silent protector. He cares for his crew in a different way to Luffy, and Sanji is no exception to that. His reaction to Luffy calling him out being "shut up, I'll kick you" even adds to this, because as small as that detail is, we all know Zoro's specialty is not kicking. I can't even remember if he's ever said he's going to kick anyone before. Usually he defaults to cut or slash. Got someone on your mind there, Zoro? All in all, I can see why that scene majorly confused a lot of people. Their relationship is like no other. I mean, Zoro hasn't even used Sanji's name before, but Sanji never called him out for it, and as we know, Sanji likes being referred to as a cook. It's also bizarre to me that Zoro uses everyone's name except for Sanji's. It's certainly a special treatment, but I don't believe he's doing it due to having no respect for him. Once again, it mirrors the way Sanji and Zeph treated each other. Zeph only using Sanji's name once, and that's when he was leaving the Baratier, which showed just how emotional of a moment that was for him. This name call, as strange as it is, acts more like a childish form of endearment than anything else. And if you still don't believe me, if you still think Zoro and Sanji don't really like each other, I have one more card up my sleeve. Watch out, because we're getting into Wano now. It's no accident that Zoro and Sanji went up against King and Queen, Kaido's own metaphorical wings. And let me tell you, the individual strength does not matter here. What matters is the contrast they present as duos. Why? Because we're seeing how wings who actually hate each other would act. There is absolutely no synchronization with King and Queen while they're fighting the Straw Hats. And especially when they're fighting Zoro and Sanji. They even tell each other to get out of the way. King and Queen saying they can deal with it themselves, and oh, how interesting. It's almost exactly how Zoro and Sanji acted during the Davy back fight. The only difference? There is no respect between them. And it feels like Oda desperately trying to show us Zoro and Sanji function so well because of their respect for each other. King even aims his attack at Queen, not caring at all if he gets hit for his greater goal. And we know Zoro and Sanji would never do this. Zoro would never purposefully aim an attack at Sanji knowing it could hit him during battle, would never use Sanji as bait unless previously discussed. And that moment with Enma does not count because that was just one of their stupid play fights. But we especially see just how aware they are of each other while fighting together. Zoro is the only one to notice something is wrong with Sanji when Sanji's body begins to act up. And while discussing this, he blocks an attack to keep Sanji safe. We've seen before that Zoro is acutely aware of Sanji during previous battles. The biggest one coming to mind being Water 7, when he was the only one to notice Sanji's disappearance when sussing out the area at the time.
なんで逃げるんだ自分から仕掛けといて
バカ野郎いちいち逃げる敵まで追っかけてたら時間の無駄だろうがうるせえな確認だ
It's no wonder King and Queen were taken down by these two, because in the end, wings cannot function without that mutual respect. And together, they are an incredibly dangerous force to be reckoned with. There are tons of other scenes that show Zoro and Sanji's care for each other, such as Sanji running to help Zoro during Sabaody, or Zoro worrying Sanji was going to be killed against Oars. But I digress. I think the funniest detail is how, even with their shadows taken and put in zombies, they still fight with each other. A core part of their personalities is to fight. If that doesn't scream affection, then I don't know what does. So, with everything we've now seen, yes, I do believe the Davy back fight was important, because it cemented who Zoro and Sanji are today. Wano especially ended with a bang, with Sanji making Zoro promise to kill him if he ever fully mutated into an emotionless soldier. Zoro, of course, is shocked at this, but he tells Sanji he has something to look forward to after defeating King. And what does he end it with? You better not die before then. Once again, this is Zoro's weird way of showing worry and care. To put it simply, and in the worst possible way I could, they're both tsunderes. Wild, I know. I am so excited to see how their relationship continues to develop, because it's definitely not done yet. I personally would love to see them have a proper fallout, and I'm hoping this promise is going to plant the seed for bigger things. So here's to future arcs and more angst between Zoro and Sanji. And with that, thanks for watching. Zoro and Sanji mean a great deal to me because I believe they work better with each other than they do alone. Their writing is expertly done in being simultaneously witty and emotionally intricate, and I'm truly invested in how two characters can be so connected in such interesting ways. If there are any new developments with their dynamic, I will certainly be making a video on it, and I am so excited to see what comes next for them. As always, let me know what you think. I always love seeing everyone's opinions on these characters because it gives me more of an insight on their writing. I'd also like to quickly drop that if you'd like to support me and my videos, I do have a Patreon that you can donate to, and I really do appreciate that support. But I do understand not everyone can do that, and just watching and sharing these videos helps me more than you can imagine. If there's anything you'd like to see me cover, One Piece or otherwise, please let me know, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. See ya!